because I really, anyway, he was given he was Sugi's, reincarnated brother from a past life. And Ron Van Dyke was Sugi's reincarnated father from a previous life. Karen Colland was, Queen Wilhelmina reincarnated, which is funny because Karen Colland is in her mid-60s and Wilhelmina only died 40 years ago, so...
doesn't work, does it?
Yeah. So he was giving all these people titles and telling them who they were in past lives and, this whole spiritual thing. He started playing the spiritual thing when he saw that the delegations were all sort of spiritual muppets, basically, and started playing that game more and more and more. And then the more he played that game, the more repugnant it became to me because I knew that wasn't true spirituality. It didn't rhyme with that vision I had of oneness of everything. And so, that meaning was long gone, that peace from that vision was long gone, and I was sitting there in Australia after this trip and I recovered from my flu and pneumonia and I started looking at these bonds and all these SwissIndo Indonesia guys were posting all these bonds online and, Ross's story about the right-hand man of Sino getting money from Indonesians, and I'm thinking one of the things that got me convinced too is that nobody asked me for money, because usually when you get into some sort of an organisation, there is that, you can have this money later, but have you got some
come sooner or later, but
it's
you
like,
weren't being bitten, but someone else was, maybe.
Yeah, I'm thinking, and I cannot verify this, but I'm thinking that these well-to-do middle-class and upper-class Indonesians that I saw on top of that roof are paying big money, because Sukarno is such a mythical figure in Indonesia. And is it the Green Hilton? What am I thinking
I
of?
don't know much about it, but it's a term that's waved around a lot as something that might have saved the U.S. and Kennedy or whatever.
Well, what happened was in 1944, at the end of World War II, the Green Hilton Agreement was signed at the conference of, and I can't for the life of me think where the conference was. It was in the States anyway, and so what that entailed was that because we were rebuilding at the end of World War II and America was not running a deficit, so America would stay pegged to the gold, the American currency, and all the other currencies in the world would peg themselves on the American dollar, and the American dollar would be the world's exchange currency. This is this is the conference that in 44 set all that in motion. Okay, and the legend was that Sukarno was and the families were providing the backing for the United States to peg onto the dollar, and the United States has centralized all the gold, and all the Western governments all had their gold in the US for safekeeping because of the war, etc., etc.
Well, I believe this to be mythology, and the U.S. gold, Fort Knox gold, was largely acquired when Roosevelt forced Americans to sell their gold to the government.
Yeah, that's right. But there's also these bonds and this Asian gold, and so anyway, at the end of World War II, this conference took place. And after that, the American economy went into decline after the booms, and the Vietnam War started, so the Allies basically wanted to exchange their US for gold again, and so Nixon abandoned the gold standard. So that's when money became fiat, when the gold standard was completely abandoned. And so the Indonesians had great pride in that Sukarno went to that conference, and that all this wealth was supposedly based on the gold that was in Indonesia and the Philippines, and there's supposedly 7 of these funds. So there is.
I would say this is mythology. That if it was proven, it would be something more than mythology. But at this point, I don't think we can say that it is more than mythology.
The Green Hilton Agreement is history.
The funds are the part that.
But the Indonesian part of it, yes. So this is, but you got to see the level of myth that Sukarno is like a god.
Yeah, no, I've heard that.
So the level of myth is very, very high. And here's the man who's magically via God, via the God they believe in, inherited all Sukarno's codes, and he's got the microfilm, and it's all verified, and he's the head of the UN. There's all these foreign delegates. And this is what I really, because they didn't ask me for money, okay?
Yeah,
they didn't ask any of the Western people for money. So you always go, quid bono, who profits when anything gets presented to you. And, you've been with groups where they start asking you for money, you kind of think, well, sorry, it's very nice to be spiritual with you, but when you start asking me for money, buddy, I'm just out of here, And that didn't happen. There was no motive for us other than what we were recruited for us to be recruited. There was no motive, and I racked my brains after I came back to Indonesia, and what really did it was...
Yeah, well, there are reports, and I think you've seen some of those reports, as I have, that people in Indonesia know friends of theirs who are middle-class type people who have given huge loans to Sino.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and they're doing it because they're promised very high interest rates. And,
yeah. This is what clicked when I saw that video on YouTube, Logic 8, about the hopium and the delegates' window dressings. That video, which is where we began to exchange on that page. So I'm back in Australia. I'll just get back and finish the timeline, basically. So I'm back in Australia. All the cracks were there, and when I settled back into my home and my family life, I just couldn't bring up the same enthusiasm to be on the blower for 20 hours a day, and sometimes I had 2 or 3 conferences going at the same time on Skype, on Zoom, and on TeamSpeak at the same time, right? So that's how busy we were, multitasking 20 hours a day. And I just couldn't do that anymore. I was tired of it. We'd signed this thing, nothing had kicked off. I tried to get in touch with the Laos delegation. They wouldn't have a bar. They wouldn't answer my Skype calls or emails or... I was kind of over it, and now we're doing Venus Project, and that just kind of was a real stab in the back for all the OPPT people, and, it's changed again. We've had this date. Nothing's happened.
What did you do? I mean, the cracks are there. You're becoming very disillusioned with the whole thing.
Yeah.
And when you decide, I suppose you can talk about that, but when you decide to get out,
Yeah, well, I decided to get out when Ross gets deposed for asking the hard questions over in Indonesia. And then I realised, hang on a minute, we are window dressing, we are being used, and he, being Ross is a smart and resourceful man, right? Very resourceful, very smart, very intelligent man, very good communicator. And he hides that under a, g'day mate, how the fuck are you going, Australian? So he disarms you, and then he gets right in there. Brilliant, man. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And he got that translator, and he got those rumours, and he queried it. And he was now too plugged into the Indonesians. He gets too close to the bone, right? And then all of a sudden, there is a coup in the Australian delegation, and he gets deposed, and
so he gets thrown out that
yes
way. Right.
Yeah, and
you're still in.
I'm still in. I'm still by that time we had a 5-tier sort of structure. We had an emperor and 5 prime ministers, and I was prime minister for national, international, UN objectives at that stage. And so I had 4 prime ministers next to me under the emperor, so to speak. And Reno was one of those prime ministers, and it was another one of these failed attempts. Nothing has happened. Let's do a purge. And then all of a sudden Ross, who now has inroads into Indonesian intelligence directly with a good translator, asked the hard questions, and all of a sudden questions Sugi's decision about the Venus Project. We had to do a memorandum of understanding for the Venus Project on behalf of SwissIndo as prime ministers.
So you're being asked to write the legal documents, the heads of agreement?
The MOU, yes, that's right.
Even though you haven't, it wasn't your choice to do that project, but you're being asked to do the legal work anyway, the heads of agreement.
Yes, and Ross questioned this, and Ross told us, I'm the emperor, I'm overriding that, you're reporting to me, I'm not having you do that until I talk to Sugi about this, etc., etc. And Rena and other people go ahead, so they gain Sugi's favour, they have obeyed, Ross hasn't obeyed, and Ross is overthrown. But I don't think Ross was overthrown because of the MOU, I think Ross was overthrown because he was getting too much direct, intelligible intelligence out of Indonesia. And that's where the whole cracks came. And then Ross showed me this picture. When we left Cirebon, all the South Africans were still there, and the whole big part of the Australian delegation was still malingering and loitering around there. And Sugi came out and actually put this whole big pile of gold on his table. Gold and platinum. And Ross and I were Skyping, and he said, have you seen the pictures that the South African delegates threw up on Facebook of the gold? And Ross said, here, have a look at it. And he Skyped me a picture of it. The gold on Sugi's table, or the platinum on Sugi's table. And Ross said, have a good look at it, mate. And I went and I zoomed in and I said, yeah, mate, I see it. He goes, what do you see? I said, this is Johnson and Matthey are a Australian precious metals brand, which is Johnson spelt as we know it in the English language. And I looked at the branding on the platinum bar, and it said Johnson, Johonson, and it had a horseshoe shape on it, and it didn't say platinum; it said platinium. When I zoomed in,
it's anything but platinum.
Yes, so there's this whole huge pile of this gold, silver, and platinum on Sugi's table in front of all these delegates, and they're all going, look, he's brought out the gold. It's real. Look at all this pile of gold. Because the pile that was there was worth, if it was real, it was worth a bloody fortune. Millions and millions. And they're all going, oh, look at it. He's showing us the gold. He's brought it out for us. Isn't that great? And Ross is going, have a look, mate. And I'm going, oh, shit, I'm seeing what you're seeing. How is this King of Kings, who's the favourite of God and the intergalactic prophet of all goodness and whatnot, manipulating people by throwing fake platinum bars? And of course, straight away onto Google, start researching fake platinum bars in Indonesia, Johnson and Matthey horseshoe brand. Go to any number of precious metals forums, and you will find that these fake bars are all over.
This is the sort of top tier of fake gold. Is that right? Gold and platinum. It's a brand. It's a known brand name of fake gold and silver and platinum.
And they misspelt it as the Asian forgers have, in the beginning misspelt a lot of things that were Western because they just didn't understand the language. So there he is with piles of fake platinum, fake platinum, and fake silver and fake gold on his table, impressing these delegates, and that was the final crack for me. And then when Ross got deposed, because Ross rang up Sugi and he said, "Hey mate, look, that shit you thrown on the table there, mate, that's not fucking real gold, that's fucking fake, mate." Because Ross doesn't, he
beat around the bush.
He doesn't beat around the bush. He's just straight and direct, and he can also be very diplomatic. He can do both. But when it comes to venting his feelings, and all the effort he'd put in, like everybody else, he got a bit angry. He got a bit aggro, as we say in Australia. And he rang Sugi up and told him, what the fuck are you doing and what sort of integrity is this? You're putting fake fucking gold. And no, he didn't ring Sugi. He rang Aprianto and Ananto, which is Sugi's left and right hand man, basically. Yeah. And I'll name him because I don't give a shit, really. Sorry. There's still a bit of anger here, or resentment still, mostly.
We've been talking for just over 2 hours, and, I think I'd like to wrap things up. So I'd like to ask you sort of one more question, because I think it's like just the tail end of the story. When you decided it was time to stop, what did you do?
I basically wrote a letter of resignation to Mr. Sugi and, Aprianto and Ananto and the left and right hand man, and to all the heads of the delegations, all the emperors and empresses, and, to the new empress of the Australian delegation, and I basically told them that, circumstances had come to light which made me question my involvement with SwissIndo, and still being kind of half unsure, still in the background somewhere, still wanting it to happen, so I didn't want to alienate them, so I wrote a very nice letter of, we were going to go our separate ways, and I wish you all the best in your endeavours, and, by the way, anything that I've done while with SwissIndo has been done as a voluntary employee of SwissIndo, and therefore the onus is on SwissIndo to honour anything that I've done. I'm not personally liable, and, thank you very much. And at this same time, about 12 people in the American delegation defected. Mm-hmm. Some of whom went over to the camp of Ron Van Dyke's ambassador, but that's a whole other story for another time.
What was the reaction to your letter?
Nothing. None.
Do you think they expected it?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't know whether they expected it or not, but they did not react. And in actual fact, Ross, when he was deposed, was told by another delegate who was in Indonesia that was it. He was deposed. He wasn't even, for his 2 years of service around the clock, sacrificed his whole life too. Basically, he didn't even get a response. He wasn't even told by Sugi that he was relieved of his position as emperor.
So in this organization, you don't get a golden handshake, and you don't even get a platinum or whatever it is. Handshake.
No, you don't get a platinum bar to go buy yourself a opium pipe. So, this is it. I mean, spiritual awakenings, they have no meaning as far as I'm concerned. They just tell you who you are and that everything is alive in the same aliveness as you are. And don't try and assign any meanings to it, because you end up where I ended up, chasing your tail and working yourself into the ground, getting into ill health. I gained 20 kilos of weight, sitting behind computers 24 hours a day, being so tired that all I could do to keep myself going was eat, sitting in front of the computer. I gained 20 kilos of weight, and I gained a lot of ill health. I've lost most of it nowadays. Hallelujah.
To sort of wrap things up here, I mean, you sound good now. You sound in a good, positive frame of mind. It's really a whale of a tale. Over 2 hours, I wasn't bored for a second. So thank you very much for sharing this, the story with us. And I think it's an important one too, because there are people who are still involved. There are people who might get involved if they didn't hear this story. Yeah. And I think it's important to get it out there and give people a chance to, hear your side of the story.
Sure.
Without spin and rancor. I mean, the odd word came up, but so what? You told the story, you told what happened. And I think it's really important, now to get this out there and, give people a chance to hear it and think about it and respond to it. And, I really would, hope we can have another chat sometime.
I'd love to do that.
I'd like to see what the response is.
Honestly, it's gone for 2 hours, and I haven't even cracked the surface of a lot of stuff yet, but at least there's an overview there. And I do, before we finish up, want to just reiterate my motivation for this is basically I went out there. I went onto radio shows, alternative media. I did videos with Ron. I recruited at least about 30 people over my tenure as in senior levels of the delegations. I feel responsible for having done that. And a lot of people are still finding old material on YouTube, etc., which has me endorsing it and being all enthusiastic and raptured over it, without knowing what the story is. So there's still people being led on by what I'm doing, and I want to just bring balance to that. And this is my closure. I when I came out of this, I was so alone. You know, it was so hard for me to come out of this because here was I, the saviour of the world, who was being wrung 20 hours a day from all over the world, sorting out all these problems so we could do this thing of free humanity. And all of a sudden the phone stops ringing and you're nobody and you're just this guy, you know.
Like all of us.
Yeah, like all of us. And now it's good to be this guy. I'm very, very happy to be this guy. But at that moment, it was just the loneliest thing, and you felt like such a fool too, because once the cracks were gone and you detoxed off the opium, you just think, holy cow, you know, I was like a drug addict, you know, and I was touting for everybody else to take drugs, and I've led people up the garden path. There is still material out there of me leading people up on the garden path, and I want to set this straight. I want to bring this into balance by finding somebody who has no pro or con agenda and actually doing an interview with them and just telling my story of what happened, and people make up your own mind. What I've told in this interview is, from where I'm standing, 100% truthful and factual. Mm-hmm. Okay, make up your own mind. Maybe I'm wrong, but my best bet is that the delegates are being used for propaganda so that the people in Indonesia keep giving Sugi money, and, you know, it's all hopium. You know, it is all hopium, and it's based somewhat on some historical facts, which gives it traction for some people, but the foreign delegates are just being used to give it all traction and validity, and that's it. You know, that's my best. And the other thing that I think might be motivating is basically that the Sugi may be somebody who has religious mania of some sort, and who, may be a religious megalomaniac who believes in his own divinity and convinces people of it so well, using the whole Sukarno backstory. So he could just be like any old other guru that gets people whipped up, you know. Mm-hmm. It could be just as simple as that he has some sort of narcissistic religious syndrome and is very convincing in that. And, you know, there is something in his presence that is out of the ordinary. And you know, it may not be very benign. It may be just that is just slightly religiously insane, and this whole thing has just converged into this. So my best bet would be, and just one closing remark, just a sober logical remark, don't get involved with SwissIndo unless you're a high-level banker and a high-level international lawyer, because if the collateral accounts exist, okay, it's going to take high-level bankers and high-level international lawyers to do the right paperwork to release it in the right way. And the likes of myself, a small businessman, or possibly the likes of whoever is listening, just because you're chosen by God and blah, 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 blah. No, a worldly undertaking like that, a secular worldly undertaking like releasing these funds would require lawyers, experts, economists, financial market people. It would require a total overhaul of the financial system, and you do need experts for that. But
I feel compelled to add to that even if all of that existed, even if the right lawyers and bankers and documents were in place, the other side of it is there has to be the ability to honor the debt.
Yeah,
and which is, in other words, the U.S., I think the U.S. is the main, if not the only signatory of these bonds, would have to have the ability to issue gold or issue actual money
correct,
to pay these obligations.
Yeah.
And the way these things are structured, you know, gold plus interest rate means that the original amount of, say, you know, $1,000 for a bond has probably exploded to 20,000 or some higher number.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure the money isn't there. Yeah. In fact, some people, and I'll just finish, you know, this point with this. Sure. Some people like Joseph Farrell think that money, that gold has been used to develop the secret space program. So the money isn't even on this, the wealth isn't even on this planet anymore. It's out in the stars. You know, so this is probably a waste of time, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's
exactly
a great
right.
story, and it deserves a lot more thorough investigation.
Yeah, but when you get recruited, you get told that it's based on the wealth that's sitting in the caves, right? You're not told about those bonds, right? You're not told that. So for anybody coming into it, that's the story they'll get. It was just a story that I got. The M1 story, the gold in the caves, the UBS, it's SwissIndo, it's the Unified Bank of Switzerland, whatever it is, that's certified, and, all the fiat money is going to be based on that wealth. It's not going to be fiat money anymore. It's going to go back to a gold standard that SwissIndo is supplying from its vaults in, the caves of Indonesia. So you don't get told about those bonds. That's just something that, I came across. And that's something that Ross came across, and that's sort of what we put together, and I've seen those bonds. And I have been told recently that Sugi, on his last trip to Laos, and they were on Laos TV. They signed agreements with the Laos government on Laos TV news and all that sort of stuff.
I've seen that.
Yeah, and Laos is now pretty pissed off with him apparently, because he showed up there with a suitcase full of these treasury notes. He showed up there with a suitcase full of them when they complained and said, hang on, where is the money you keep promising? He showed up with a suitcase of these treasury notes and said, here's your money. And they just went, what the F is that, basically? So, So if you're considering and looking into SwissIndo, then, I don't know everything, because when you're in SwissIndo, no matter how long, say SwissIndo insider, I was never an insider because I was never told the real facts. It always just strung along with some story. And I tried to dig for facts, and when I did, that was the crack in the lacquer, and that was it. So be very careful what you get involved in and what you waste your time on, because there's a lot of good people out there who really are wanting to do something for the world and to change the way things are, and they could be doing real things instead of wasting years on opium. And that's
Peter,
one of the reasons I did this.
Thank you. This is great. This is a wonderful story and a wonderfully detailed story of something that's really going on. A lot of people have been sucked into. So thank you so much for bringing the story forward and letting us know the truth. It's really very much appreciated. And, I do think I would like to, if we get the opportunity, to have another conversation someday about maybe what can be done, and perhaps that's something we should be working on instead of following these dreams.
Yeah, exactly right. Let's face reality and tackle it head on as best as we can. And I would love to do that. I'd like to thank you for giving me a voice, because this is the one thing that sort of ends it all for me. I've brought it back into balance. I did the damage. I'm undoing the damage. That's it. I was a fool. I got sucked into it. Not going to happen again.
Well, I think your tale is, in some ways a sad one, but it's also a cautionary one. And for that reason, it's a very important one. And, it's, heroic to, come back. And, I don't think you're at danger for doing this. I can't imagine why you would be, because a lot of water's under the bridge already. But the story's out there now, and people can use this material.
A lot of stories have been told by a lot of people, and this is just my story. So thank you very much, Cleve.
Okay. Well, I'll stop the recording now and continue just for a second. Okay.
Okay, sure. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.